that. I'm on it today. Remember to record and everything. I even posted the slides already. I am on it. Okay, so again, we're talking about continuities and changes associated with the growth of industrial capitalism. That's the objective. All sorts of new key terms, people you might have heard of, like John D. Rockefeller or Andrew Carnegie. Social Darwinism, which is a term I know I've mentioned, but we haven't really got into. We're going to get into it today. Robber barons, captains of industry, all sorts of great stuff. But before we get into that, before we get into the topic today, I'm going to share my screen one more time. Just the regular screen because I messed it up. There we go. So really quick, you should be seeing my screen. Can I get a really quick yes, I'm seeing the screen? Yes, okay. So the first one right here, most of you should do this. Only 21 of you had. The very first assignment that was posted way before, I switched the due date to today at 5. If you have a topic, and I know who has topics and who doesn't, so don't just try to send it to me. Go in, turn it in without any attachments. It's just so I can track your grade, your topic. So like if I already told you your topic's good to go and I have you on my roster, you need to submit this first one. Just send it in. I already put your grade in PowerSchool, but I need it in both places. So just send it in really quick. And then that's that. This is the free grade. Those of you that do not have a topic approved yet, send me your topic, get it approved, then submit this. And then lastly, this. What this is, I mentioned it yesterday, and I'm talking about it again really briefly. It's not just the video. The video is a really important part of what we're doing, but you also need to have some set of notes, right? Or a script. You don't have to write a script, but you need to have some sort of notes list, some sort of written down information, whether it's a sheet of facts, whether it is a fully written script, whether it's just bullet points, anything you need. But whatever it is, it needs to be tracked through this Google Doc. So I want you to use the Google Doc. If you're one that handwrites stuff, that's fine, but you need to submit the pictures through this assignment. Now, this assignment doesn't close till the end of the week because it's not due till your project's due. So you don't need to worry about this now, but use either a Google Doc like this one specifically, each one of you should have a copy, or keep it on paper, but make sure you send me your notes or your script through Google Classroom, because that is a big chunk of the grade. And I mentioned it already, I'll mention it one more time. The final project, the video with the notes and all that stuff is going to be a test grade. It's a major grade, right? So it's meant to be a little fun, but you still got to put in the effort, right? It's still got to be accurate. So every day during this week for class, I'm going to try to make sure that there is time for me to kind of talk you through stuff if you have questions. I'll leave a little bit of time at the end. I'll stay in the call. We can talk about that stuff. So with that being said, those are the assignments from the project. If you have any more project questions, hold them for the end because we will get into them at the end. So there will be time scheduled, as there always is, for the project. So Miller, you're gonna have to hold up till the end and we can talk about it after. Because that was like all yesterday we were talking about it. Okay, so slides are back up, or at least they should be back up. Let's get our notes page ready to go. Again, if you have questions about the project, save them for this afternoon. Not this afternoon, right after class. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. It's been a long day, guys. All right, so let's get into it. Again, the rise of industrial capitalism. Capitalism as we know it now started here, and we're going to get into why and how. So again, continuities and changes, we already covered that. First key point, large scale production, right? Big mass production. Technological change, right? The innovations that your projects are going to be about. Expanding international communication networks, specifically telegraphs, later telephones. And pro-growth government policies generated rapid economic development and business consolidation. I forgot to read for a second. I forgot how to read. Sorry about that. But basically, businesses coming together, right? Consolidation. So that is what's happening. Technology's changing. The government's helping. New communication, new scaled production. and you have this new economic development, and you have businesses coming together, right? Consolidating, grouping up. It's not just Farmer Joe and the local farmer anymore. Now it's Big Bob's Farming Emporium, and it's like 75 farms all glued together into one big farming group, right? Or it's not just Textile Mill, Jill, and that rhyme, and the one factory. Now it's all the factories put together and they make, I don't know, Terry's t-shirts. I don't know, guys. I'm bad with names, but you get what I'm saying. Now it's companies, joint stock groups, trusts, things like this, all making large, huge groups that are kind of unchallenged. Who knows what a monopoly is, not just the board game? I'll give you some time for that. A monopoly. Like, if you know what a monopoly is, and not just the board game, put it in the chat. Not the game. The game's based on this. The whole point of the game is to get monopolies, but what is a monopoly? That's a good question. Would Zuckerberg have a monopoly on social media? Not quite, because aren't some of the other companies owned by other, like, isn't Twitter somebody different? And YouTube is Google. So he would be close, but being only person who sells the thing. Exactly. That's good, Goddard. So a monopoly means you own the entire industry, right? So for example, cell phones. If there was only one cell phone company, like just Apple made cell phones. Google doesn't make cell phones, Samsung, nobody makes cell phones but Apple. That's a monopoly. Does that make sense? So that's what a monopoly means. And I mean, there can't be one single competitor, right? Maybe one competitor, but like there shouldn't be any. When you think monopoly, I want you to think no competitors. So yeah, like Godric nailed it. So one person who sells the thing, right? Or who owns the market. Now, those are going to become a thing during this time period, and there's a bunch of ways that they can form. Kind of, right? Because they're not quite one, but they're the only ones doing it really well. So they're in a weird spot. But imagine if other companies started to make electric cars, and then they bought all of the other companies. That's what these guys are going to be doing. Now, the reason people can't do that now is because it's illegal. We can thank Teddy Roosevelt for that. But, all right, let's move on. If you need time, if you need to grab a screenshot of this key point, because I just kind of blabbed through and didn't set a timer, let me know. I'll leave you a few seconds, and we're going to move on. All right, so the Gilded Age. The term gilded means to be wrapped in gold. And you don't need to write that down. It's just something I think you should know. And the reason that this era is typically called the Gilded Age is because on the outside, it looks really good. There's all this money happening, all this change in the US. But it's not quite so nice when you get past the golden layer, right? Like, imagine if, and I stole this from the internet, but like if, picture like those golden wrapped Easter eggs, but when you pull the golden wrapping off, instead of chocolate, it's a turd, right? Like that's the United States. Like the gold on the outside is all these guys we're going to talk about. And then the turd on the inside is what's happening to everybody else. And we're going to talk about that a little later on in the week, what's happening to everybody else. We're going to talk about a little bit now, but we're going to talk more about that a little later. And it's the best analogy I heard about what the Gilded Age is. And again, I stole it from the internet, so don't quote me on that quote. Who did I steal it from? I don't remember who I stole it from, but I stole it from somebody. Anyways, so what do you do need to write down? Small businesses, obsolete and gone. There are more small businesses now than there would have been during this time period. Large corporations like railroad, steel, and oil industries take their place. Now, those aren't the big industries today in 2020. What would you say are big industries in 2020? Name some that are like massive billion-dollar industries now, because it's not railroad, steel, and oil anymore. Well, oil still. Google's good. Amazon's good. What else? Meat, I'll give you meat. Zoom, not quite Zoom. Close though. Smartphones, online shopping. Yeah, Tesla's good, right? Like, so yeah, you guys are getting this, right? Those corporations though are just starting out. The ideas of them just started, and it starts with Carnegie Steel, Standard Oil, Union Pacific Railroads, Uber. I'll give you Uber, or like, and when you guys are naming a lot of specific stuff, right? Like Tesla, I see Zoom, I see Amazon, Uber Eats. Amazon's one that I think stands on its own. So does Google. But like, for example, Uber Eats, you would say like apps, like the app industry, right? That's what the railroad industry is, or that's what the steel industry was, at least back then, right? The industry of making iPhone apps or delivery apps, if you want to be more specific, right? Because there's more than just one. Okay, so that being said, small businesses gone, large corporations are forming. We're going to talk about two guys specifically for this lesson, but there are more. And I'm going to give you a list of some at the end and a couple of the names you're going to want to write down just to have. But the two we're going to talk about mostly today are John D. Rockefeller, who created a company called Standard Oil. They start with like whale oil for lamps and stuff, and they evolve into oil, like petroleum-based oil, like that you think of now when you think of oil. Early on, he made a lot of moves that forced, and shady moves, but a lot of these business guys are like shady business guys. Like, they have good qualities, but they also have some pretty bad ones, and they're doing this stuff on purpose to make the most money for themselves. And so they make, Rockefeller specifically will make moves that forces all his competitors, all the other oil companies in the US, to sell their companies to him. So within a few years, Standard Oil will control 90% of the industry. That's pretty much a monopoly. Like, there's really only one company that you buy oil from in the United States, and that's Standard Oil. Andrew Carnegie does something a little different. He doesn't buy other steel companies, but he dominates the industry and he buys up every single supporting business. So like, he makes steel. What else does he buy? He buys mines. What else does he buy? He buys railroads. Does that make sense? Because he controls every single access, or not access, but point of the steel business. He has a little bit in everything, so he can make his money. These are two different systems. We're going to talk about them again at the end, right? But they have two different approaches to business, and both are very successful, and both are a little bit unfair. Because instead of a separate person, right, making the money off of the mining, it's Carnegie making the money off the mining. Instead of having other oil companies to compete with and change prices on, it's just Standard Oil setting the prices, right? It's kind of like, if we go back to the iPhone analogy, right? If there were only iPhones and you can't afford an iPhone, can you have a cell phone? No, right? Because there's only iPhones. It's not a great system, and it's going to take a long time for people to, not for people, but for this to get fixed. For a while, it's going to look like this. This is why small farmers, when we were talking about small farmers earlier, all losing money and having to sell their farms, it's because of larger corporations like this kind of dictating what the price is. And there's no competition. Competition's good. Like, I always laugh at people that say, oh, PlayStation's better than Xbox, blah, 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 and they want one to go away. But when they're both together and they're both undercutting each other, that's when the consumer benefits. You want Samsung to be almost as good as an iPhone, because then that means they got to make the iPhone better, so you'll buy the iPhone instead of the Samsung, right? You want competition. And what these guys were doing is they were getting rid of competition. They were making it to where they were the only ones in their respective businesses. And again, they're not the only two to do this. They're just the two we're going to focus on. We'll talk about some more of them at the end, and there's a bunch of them. Think of an industry in the Gilded Age. There's probably a guy like this at the top of it. So I'll give you a quick minute so I can stop talking, and you guys can get some info down. If you need more time than that, let me know. The Gilded Age. Don't get you started. Yeah, this is a very, this is a very interesting, fun topic. About 45 seconds. Oh yeah, people finally looking into the cameras. Yeah. You finally get more modern photography, right? Like the Kodak camera is going to come out during this time. All right, guys, let's move on. Let's get to the next key point. All right, so businesses use redesigned financial and management structures, advancements in marketing and growing labor force to dramatically increase the production of goods. What does that mean? So a couple of things, but one is you get the idea of advertising and marketing is becoming a thing. So like, hey, don't buy their oil, buy Standard Oil because it's the standard. You know what I mean? Like little slogans like that. There's a labor force that we're going to get into in a little bit, and just read different types of structures. Spying. I'm assuming you're talking about like companies spying on each other. That very much could be a thing. So again, a quick 45 seconds. This is a short key point, but you're having different structures happening for the first time. Companies, things that are common now are being thought up and used for the first time then. This is all capitalism at its finest. Go about another 30 seconds. If you need more time than that, let me know. All right, guys, let's move forward. Government involvement. So due to something called laissez-faire government, right? We've talked about laissez-faire before, right? Laissez-faire economy. Laissez-faire means no government intervention, no government involvement. Hands off, in other words, right? Like if you see, hold on, let me turn off. I put that little cartoon up there of the guy sitting in the chair, and it's like our manager prides himself on very much being hands off, and the guy's just like chilling, reading a newspaper, like not doing any work. So hands off has a few interpretations, right? What do you need to know? Hands off laissez-faire policies allow this to happen. Because the government's not going to get involved in business, these business people, right? These business men, I say men because the one right now it's men. These people are going to be able to do what they want, like control an entire industry, like be shady and sneaky in order to get everybody to sell to them, things like that. Now, politicians may have believed this was best for the economy, right? We cannot say for sure that they didn't. But we can also say for sure that politicians certainly received massive bribes from business owners. Guys like Carnegie and Rockefeller most certainly paid politicians to support their interests. And so is it, what's the truth? It's probably a little column A, a little column B. Some guys believed, hey, we should stay away from the economy and not like legislate against it. And some were probably just getting big fat paychecks to not do any of that stuff, right? So it's probably a little column A, a little column B. What do you need to know? What laissez-faire is. You need to know that some politicians might have believed this and that most of them were probably just getting bribes. Bribes. I said bribes. I don't know what a bribe is, but a bribe is, you know, when people take money. Okay. So I'll give you about a minute and a half here. This one's pretty short. Again, if there are any questions, let me know so I can slow down, as they say. We're about to talk about labor. Labor is coming up next. And remember, if you have questions about the project, please save them for the end. We will have time to talk about them and what you need to be doing. 30 seconds. Can I go back for like 5 seconds? Yes, I will in about now, actually. Let me go back really quick. If you need this, take a screenshot really quick, and I'm going to go back for a couple of seconds and then move forward. All right, going to move forward now. So unskilled labor, there's a lot of information on the slide. Before you start writing everything down, right, listen up really quick. So remember way back when we talked about immigrants coming to the United States? You guys remember that stuff? It's still happening. This is all the same stuff, right? We're just talking about it in different order. Some immigrants go west. Some of them do. Most of them stay in the cities. They migrate towards urban centers and they find work in factories. This is unskilled work, and these immigrants are vastly underpaid. Factory owners and businessmen will just say, hey, I'll give you X amount of dollars per day or per week or whatever. And if they ever said, hey, we want to be paid more, there's a whole boat full of immigrants right behind them that will take that job for the less pay. So they're in a position where they're unable to advocate for themselves because there's plenty of other labor all in the city that is willing to do that job for the less amount of money. During this time, factory owners will employ women and children to work at these machines as well. They don't do this out of some virtue or because of some, women's equality rights thing. They do this because they know they can pay women and children cheaper than they have to pay men. So that's why it happens. It's important to note that. Because yes, this is a point where women start to become bread makers in the household. You're right. This is true. But it's not because these factory owners are such nice guys. I mean, they're not like nice people trying to do that. They're literally doing it because they can pay women less than they can pay men. Especially back then. Social Darwinism is the corruption of the biological idea of Darwinism, right? Evolution, survival of the fittest. Basically, the basics of it is if nature works that way, so does society. Strong companies eat weak companies, strong people subdue weak ones, etc. That is what social Darwinism is. So you need the definition of social Darwinism. You need to know that women and children are working on these factories for less pay. And you need to know that immigrants are working in these factories for very small pay, very small amounts of pay, you could say. And they're unable to get higher wages because they can be replaced very easily. And we're going to talk more about labor and about unions and about things like that and where these, what would you say, like injustices start to get fixed, but it is not quite there yet. Right now, this is still when the people did what they want. So I'll give you about 2 minutes, I'd say, probably a little less, to get that info down, and then we will move on. What do you mean? So you need to know that the immigrants that are working have no opportunity to make more money, because if they try to ask for money, they'll get replaced. You need to know that women and children are working in the factories for less pay overall, and then you need to define social Darwinism. So you don't need it word per word, but those are the things that you need. And what's in here? Jose, I just saw your message for the topic, the write-in topic. That's a good topic, so you're good on that topic. Again, about a minute left. Thirty seconds. All right, about 8 seconds. If you need more time, please grab a screenshot so we can move on. Or does, yeah. Actually, no, we'll do another 45 seconds just in case. There's a lot of info in here. Then we'll move on. Hopefully you guys are having a good Tuesday. Good question. So as a project homework, kind of, there's going to be time at the end of some of these classes, especially like tomorrow and probably the next day. But like there'll be a little bit of time today. It's a little bit. But the recording and stuff, I would say yes. The actual like taking the couple of minutes to record it. The taking the notes and doing things like that, like having the information, that's more what I'm going to give you time at the end of each class a little bit for. And I would recommend doing some of it at home. Like don't do it all during class. Like this is meant to be done a little bit outside, a little bit in. Like I said, there will be some, I'll give you some work time at some point this week, at least once, probably twice. And like, well, I'll talk about it a little more at the end. But yes, and yes, it is. But there will be time in class, but not, it is not an in-class assignment. It is meant to sort of be outside. Don't spend hours and hours and hours every day doing it, right? But if you spend a little bit of time each day, it should be all you need. All right, let's move forward. All right, so last key point of the day. Many business leaders sought increased profits by consolidating corporations into large trusts and holding companies, which further concentrated wealth. There was no way for others to make money in certain fields, industries, and businesses because all of the fields, industry, and businesses were put together into trusts. There is going to need to be somebody who's going to come along and bust and break all of these trusts. And that man is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Teddy Roosevelt. But this is going to be down the line. So somebody's going to have to come along and break these up because these trusts are all set up and they are designed to keep people out and keep money in. So I'll give you a quick 90 seconds on here. And then we're going to move through kind of quickly. Some of the slides that are coming up, you don't need everything on them, so make sure you listen up for what you do need because we're going to go through them faster. Faster. Wow. Ran out of words there. I don't even know what that is. About a minute left. $45 seconds. About 10 seconds. Make sure you have the info down so we can move on. All right, here we go. So empire, stop. All you need for this slide is that during this era, specifically this is coming specifically from wealthier business owners. The first interest in the United States becoming an empire starts here. That's all you need. The first interest in the United States becoming an empire will start from the wealthy business owners we are talking about today. That is all you need, all right? The background info, most Americans could care less about being an empire. In fact, we fought a way to break away from an empire. And however, corporations are going to be too interested in money out in the Pacific, in Latin America, and in Asia. So what do you need? Again, really brief, shouldn't take more than a minute. It's a really quick sentence, right? Business interests lead to interest in empire, right? Lead to Americans wanting, or not Americans, but like American business leaders wanting empire for the first time. This is where like the Philippines and Puerto Rico and all of these places start coming up. Alaska. Other little tiny islands in the Pacific. So I'll give you another 45 seconds or so, but all you need to know, empire, the idea, the little tiny idea of, hey, maybe we should have, territory outside of the continental, like that comes from business owners because they want to get into those markets. They want access to those resources, kind of like who way back when wanted access to resources to make more money. Who, think about it, way back when in like the 1600s. It's a place we came from. Somebody's got to know that. What drove colonization? And what? Land means what? What do you get more of? Power and money, right? So you guys got saved by someone from class. But yes. Yeah, right? Those 3 G's, right? Those all come from wanting money. So Americans are finally at the point where they have so much money and they've maximized their profit in the United States that they're looking at other little places. All right, so let's move on. Again, you shouldn't have gotten that word for word. You just need that little bit. These 2 definitions, you need them both. Horizontal integration, buying out the competitors. So if you make oil, buy all the other oil companies. Rockefeller did this with Standard Oil. He bought the other oil companies and added them to his, right? Vertical integration is what Carnegie did with Carnegie Steel. Company acquires all of the complementary industries that support their business. So, for example, the image is if you're a meat packing industry, you buy the wagons, you buy the meat packing plant, you buy the cooled warehouses, you buy the refrigerated cars, you buy the slaughterhouses, you buy the cattle. You buy every single aspect of your prospective industry. That's vertical, and then horizontal is just buy all the other competitors. These are the 2 different styles of business integration. They will both be very common in the United States. So I'll give you about a minute and a half for that. About a minute left, and we're going to move on. If you need more time than that, let me know. About 30 seconds. Again, if you need more time, grab a screenshot. We're moving on in 20 seconds. All right, moving forward. So wealth and the wealthy. It's not all horrible, horrendous people with a little bit of gold trying to cover up the turd that is everybody else. There is some positives here. Carnegie is not like some saint. I don't want to paint him as that, but he did believe in something called the gospel of wealth, and a lot of other, like Carnegie, if Carnegie's at the top of the top, if he's Elon Musk, like a lot of the people underneath them, underneath Carnegie, believed in it too. The gospel of wealth states that men who had wealth needed to give it back through philanthropy and generosity, that it's a God-given duty. That, don't careful when you copy that word per word because the grammar's all bad. Carnegie gave millions of dollars to build libraries, concert halls, universities. That's a picture of Carnegie Hall. I don't know, what do you mean by, no, Scientology is more of like a religion. This is more of just, like, kind of like how Manifest Destiny is a God-given right? Like, remember, it's the 19th century. It's a God-given destiny to give your money away to people that don't have any. It does look like that hotel, you're right. So you just write down what the gospel of wealth is and point out that Carnegie followed, like, yes, we credit him with the idea. And he was a big believer in it. Again, Carnegie Hall is a very famous concert hall. Like if you're into old concerts or old stand-up and stuff, a lot of old stand-up comedians, like Robin Williams has one. Like Robin Williams live at Carnegie Hall. George Carlin has one live at Carnegie Hall. Like I think Robin Williams has one. I know Carlin has one. I know Richard Pryor has one. Like these are really famous venues and universities and libraries, and they were built with Andrew Carnegie's money because he gave it back to the cities and stuff to try to not necessarily make up for what he did. He just believed that because he had so much money, he had to give some of it back. He was still like a crazy rich person. Does he do that? Does that? I don't think. No, actually, Isaac, I don't think he's played there. That's more of like a older venue, but he might. I don't. Maybe I don't know. That I'm thinking more of like 70s and 80s and 80s comedians that played there. That was back when it was like a really big deal. 70s and 80s. Nowadays, there's bigger venues, but back then it was like they say it in what's his name? Brad Pitt says it in the Nazi killing movie. Where it's like, you know how you get to Carnegie Hall, don't you? Well, you practice, right? Like Carnegie Hall was like it's where all the best concert venues were played back then. They're referencing that Carnegie Hall, like, and it's called Carnegie Hall because Carnegie bought it or paid for it. Yeah, no, I don't think a lot of modern comedians play there. I could be wrong though. I could be wrong. So I'll give you another quick 45 seconds or so. It shouldn't take us more than that. And then we'll move on to the last slide where you're only going to need to write down 4 things I like 4 words, 6 words. I'm going to stop counting words because I think it's more than 6. I might have lied. But we're almost done, I promise. About 20 seconds, we're moving on. All right, make sure you have everything you need on the slide. We're going on to the last slide here, and that is here. So, men like Carnegie and Rockefeller were major business leaders, right? You know this. They had 2 names. Now, some of them you might want to write down, another couple of names, Cornelius Vanderbilt and J.P. Morgan. You can write down Henry Ford as well if you want. Those are some other names of these guys. Now, they had 2 titles, right? They were called captains of industry, and they were called robber barons. 2 different names for the same group of people, right? All of these 6 guys in this picture can be referred to as a captain of industry or as a robber baron. What's the difference in the 2 names? Someone in chat, send it to me. What's the difference in the 2 names? Or what do you think the difference in the 2? Not quite. So types of connotation, elaborate. What do you mean connotation? One has a positive and one has a negative. Which one's the positive connotation? Like, what would you rather be called, a robber baron or captain of industry? The first one, right? Captain of industry is what you call these guys when you're trying to make them sound really awesome. You want to be called both? I mean, robber baron is what you call them when you're trying to portray them negatively. That was really solid work. Who was it? That was Max, Donovan, Jonathan, nailed it. So this is a political cartoon of robber barons. And if you Google robber baron, it's going to be these big fat people with top hats all the time. They're going to be giant. They're going to be taking money from people, right? That's what a robber baron does. Whereas like a captain of industry is like a really important business person. They're a captain of industry. They're really helpful. They're captains. They help you, blah, 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 right? So all you need for this slide, get a couple of those names down, like Vanderbilt, like JP Morgan, like Ford. Captain of industry, positive name. Robber baron, negative name. Guess what? They're talking about the same groups of people. Kind of look like pirates, but sophisticated, kind of. The picture I put on Teams in the little background is supposed to be robber barons as well. Okay, guys, so I'll leave that slide up for a little bit longer. Just a couple of quick seconds. Again, captain of industry, robber baron, positive, negative connotation, same group of people. All right, guys, so now we're going to move into what the rest of today will look like. We only have about 16 minutes, I think. Should usually have more than that. I apologize. Tomorrow we probably will. All right, let me pause the, actually, no, let me record this. So I'm going to keep recording. All right, so done with the slides. I'm going to stop the share really quick. So I just posted your exit ticket, but before you get in there, let me talk you through it. So share screen one. Here we go. So it's right here, Gilded Age, Rise of Capitalism exit ticket. Quick form MCQ. This shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes because these are AP MCQs. All you do, it's short answer. All you do is answer like 1 and then answer, 2 and then answer, 3 and then answer. Make sense? All you do is type in your answer, submit it. I will go over them and then I will send you your grades back within the next day or two. That's the exit ticket. And then the rest of this class, so do not leave this call. I'm going to give you 5 minutes for that. At the end of the 5 minutes, I'm going to talk about the project and then I will let you guys go and then I'll stick around if you have questions. 5.5 minutes are on the clock to get into Google Classroom, do that exit ticket. It shouldn't take you more than that. There's like 60 of you in here. You should all have it done